Okay, so now we start with the first round table, the future of molecular biology in Europe. It's chaired by Patricia Fernández de Lis from El País, my boss.
Thank you, Nuno. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this roundtable on the future of molecular biology in Europe. My name is Patricia Fernández de Lis, and I'm the boss, Nuno Dominguez bosses, and I'm the head of science in El País Daily, and I am really delighted to moderate this discussion today. We have an excellent panel with us this afternoon. We have first Crisanto Gutiérrez, that, as you know, is the head of the program of genome dynamics and function here at CBM. Hello, Crisanto. Thank you for being here. We also have Ángela Nieto from the Institute of Neuroscience in Alicante. Ángela, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Aurelio Hidalgo, also from CBM. Aurelio. Laura Formentini, also from CBM. Welcome, Laura. And Emilio Lecona from CBM too. So thank you, everyone, and welcome to this panel. I would like to start by asking each of you to share a short opening on how you see the current landscape of molecular biology in Europe and where do you think the field is heading to. So we are going to do it in the order that I presented you, if you like, Crisanto, and then Ángela, Aurelio, Laura, and Emilio. So that's okay? So a couple of minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. I'm really pleased to be here. In fact, we are supposed to give a few words just talking about molecular biology in Europe. And as you know, EMBO, for example, is one of the major driving forces of molecular biology in Europe. So I would like to just to mention that I think that molecular biology in general in Europe is and everywhere is really under very exciting times. Basically because now it's opening to more kind of integrative studies. I mean, a few decades ago, I mean, it was very clear that molecular interactions between proteins, nucleic acids, and so forth was the basis of the research. But now molecular biology is facing, and probably we will make some comments later on during the discussion, is making connections with several other fields. And this is actually well represented in EMBO, for example, where now there are many other disciplines that were considered outside molecular biology, but now has to be integrated with molecular studies in order to answer fundamental questions in biology. I think I will stop here and probably we will expand the discussion later.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Crisanto. And well, of course, thanks for inviting me to be here. It is a real honor. You know that the four of them are actually from CBM, but I am also from CBM because I studied here and I did my PhD here. So this is my alma mater and I feel at home, if you allow me. So today I'm CBM as well. And indeed, I mean, I wanted to actually go back to what Crisanto said. I think is the most important concept that maybe we have to deal with and understand, because what characterizes molecular biology, and in particular molecular biologists, is the way we want to actually understand biological processes, which is going deep. And going deep means going to the molecules. And so essentially what we want to know is how the molecules are actually acting together to control all biological processes. And therefore, now, molecular biology, coming from the central dogma of DNA, RNA, protein, now is being converted into an amazing integrative discipline in which we can actually tackle how molecules work, not only on its own or on a chain or in a sort of a pathway, but rather integrated with all the other processes that are occurring. And what it is really very important is that we can now move from different scales. So we go from molecules to cells, to tissues and organs, and then individuals. And I mean, in my opinion, I think in our opinion, the exciting times here come because now we can tackle and we can answer and try to answer questions which are global questions that are, of course, related to biology, but biology and the interaction with our environment, including our planet. So that, I think, is what really matters and the concept that has changed over the years. And no, I don't want to forget, actually, this is something that is also very clear here. I mean, if you look at the evolution of the Center of Molecular Biology, I joined the Center of Molecular Biology only 45 years ago. And I can tell you that the evolution in these 45 years and the 48 that I have been at this university, this is the trend, what they have been doing. You only have to look at the programs that are actually active now at the center, and you will see that this is happening.
Thank you, Ángela. Aurelio.
Thank you. So also, thank you for letting me be part of this roundtable. So I'm going to share something with you. So when I teach my undergrad courses, I always start with a historical perspective, right? And putting everything in a timeline helps you see when there is a crucial development, technological something that makes the discipline bloom and push forward faster than before. So I think we're one of these moments where we have these incoming technologies like AI or single cell, and we can integrate them with multiomics, with whatever you want, to study anything from the protein to the system. So I think exciting times are ahead. I would like to focus not so much on the state, but on the state of things, but on the challenges. Say by 2050, antimicrobial resistance is going to be the first cause of death. That's a problem. We are going to be almost 10 billion people on the planet. That puts pressure on resources, as Ángela mentioned before. Climate change, So I think molecular biology must play a role in addressing these problems and these challenges. And well, let's see how well we can do it in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, because you are going to, I ask you to be short and you are going short. Laura.
So thank you very much. I'm Laura Formentini. I'm professor of biochemistry here at the university and PI here at the CBM. And so I can only echo all my colleagues that molecular biology is the science that discovered the molecular basis of the life and so of the pathology. And so that can give us the molecular mechanism of pathology, so understand and try to find an answer for different challenges here right now in Europe and I think worldwide. And so right now in Europe, I think that one of the most evident one is aging. I think that Europe is rapidly aging, and this is a great problem for the society as we have built it. But this is also a great demonstration that molecular biology and science works. So if we think in prehistoric times, life expectancy was just 30 years. And even until the last century, it was just 30 years. It means 4 millennia, it was just a little improvement by itself. And so what makes the difference? I think it was science and technology applies to science that expand dramatically the life expectancy. And so I think that this is sufficient to highlight how we have to trust in science. We have to invest in science. And also, I think that right now that we are experimenting so vast in new technology, we as a scientist has the opportunity, but also the duty to integrate them into science to try to ameliorate our society.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. And last, Emilio, please.
Thank you. So just following what everyone has already said, so we know the challenges. So I guess the question now is how to get to actually turn them into something real. So I think that this is an opportunity for once to go back into the fundamental questions, back to basics, right? We know that there's a trend of applied science pushing everywhere, But now we have the tools to go back to the fundamental questions of how molecular biology works and how we can connect it directly to the translation. So I think it's the time to reclaim that space, to go back to saying, okay, the fundamental ideas, the fundamental basic science, I think it's useful beyond the knowledge that we get from it. And also the second challenge regarding what everyone has said too is that we have all these methods, but this then becomes a problem too, because we don't necessarily have, all of us, the tools to deal with all the methods at the same time. So I think that science is going to be more and more, and we can see it in the science that is produced right now, collaborative in nature. So we're going to have more and more teams of groups working together from different angles into a same question. And I think that's also going to be an important point in the next years. So I think that for me, this is the back to basics and collaboration, which is going to be a driver in this aspect.
So you just have answered almost all my questions, but anyway, I'm going to ask some more. I would like to ask you, and now I will be opening the panel for everyone, right? Not in this order, but just please talk whenever you want. But my first question would be, you have mentioned some challenges. What are the main challenges you have to just face one or to take one? What would be the main challenge that you see in the future of molecular biology? Aurelio, for example.
Just for clarification, like challenges in the discipline or challenges that the discipline
in
can
the
see?
discipline.
Okay, so Emilio mentioned that, and I mentioned as well before, it's a moment in which we are seeing the beginning of the application of artificial intelligence to our discipline and the potential for prediction that it has. That, however, requires that we're trained, that we're more and better trained in data science, that we collaborate with data scientists, that we understand the possibilities and the limitations of the technology. I've had a few close brushes with AI for sequence function prediction, so protein sequence function prediction, and as a predictive tool, is working really well. One of the problems is that you need to feed it large amounts of data. So how are we going to generate this large data sets? Are they already out there? Are they open so that we can reuse it? That's also a problem. But I think the biggest problem from my point of view is that as far as I understand, as far as I have experienced, AI is just predictive. It does not explain why, or it does not give you a rationale. So I don't know, maybe that's only me, but I am missing that. I'm missing the explanation behind things. As for prediction, fantastic. And that is, I would say, going to open many applications. And yeah, that's it.
Ángela?
If I can just add something to that, you're completely right. I mean, we have now tools, many tools, and we can do a lot of predictions. But here we are to actually then go back to the wet lab and do, the experiments that are actually required to prove that and to move forward. We are very good at that. We have always done that. It is only now that we get the predictions, but without predictions or so good predictions, we could actually handle. So as you said, a combination of the two, types of scientists and actually trying to do both, that is actually going to happen. So I'm not worried about that. With respect to challenges in the disciplines, there are always challenges. I mean, always have been. We manage, we are good at that. The one thing that we cannot manage is geopolitical situation. And I think that this is the real challenge. For me, this is the real challenge. How we're going to be combining, particularly in our discipline, in which we are dealing with the diversity, the terrible words, right? Diversity, planetary biology, interaction among, the different even populations, disease susceptibility, depending on different, regions in the world and all of that. This is horrible, you know what I mean, right? So for me, the main challenge is to actually be able to convince the whole society in the world and the geopolitical situation, that science is worthy. And this science is really even more worthy because this, depends progress and health.
Yeah, if I would like to start mentioning again something that I did in my previous presentation. I would put obviously when you have challenges, you also have opportunities. And I think this will be something important to consider. And I will put these new opportunities in two different planes. One is something that has been already mentioned, and is something that is procedural in the sense that how we should behave in the future in order to have more deeper understanding of, in molecular biology, but in general in science. So we really need to change to a more integrative way of doing things, collaborating with people with different expertises, etc. But also, I think that something more on the conceptual side, I would like to say that biology, we all know that is something, or everything about evolution, adaptation, diversity, and these kind of things. So and one of the major challenges, I think, is to understand in molecular terms, but in cellular terms also, this kind of diversity. In other words, I think that now we have the tools, we have genomics, all the genomes have been sequenced. So I think we should look more carefully outside, because we are mostly concentrated in 5, 6 model systems, but there are tons of other models outside there. And they probably have many things to tell us about fundamental questions in biology. I would like just to remind you, you all know that, but if someone in the 40s or in the 50s would not have concentrated in analyzing maize genetics, we would know nothing about transposons, for example. Or if, someone studying microbes, we would know nothing about telomeres. Or, many, many other examples. The repeated sequencing archaea, we would know nothing about CRISPR, and so forth and so on. So I think that this is something that is important in terms of changing our way of, finding new basic and fundamental biological questions to be answered under the molecular perspective.
Oh, so I completely agree with Crisanto, but also with Ángela. I think that we are experimenting strange times, sometimes with an escalation of uncertain events. And I think this could be also a possibility for us to rethink in some values of our society. And so I think this could be a good moment, for example, to re-putting in the center of the life of the society, the education and university, and especially public university and public education. And so the values of thinking, the value of curiosity, and so also curiosity-driven research. And so I agree that fundamental molecular biology could be a major challenge, because we really don't know whether the cure for cancer or the mechanism for longevity will come from people that are studying exactly that field, or has an answer of a very large question. So for example, I don't know why the mitochondria has different former shapes, or why this cherry is black. So I think that, of course, we have to fund applied science, in general, high quality science, but we do not have to underestimate any field of investigation and of knowledge. And so as a challenge, I think the major challenge for the next decades, I think, is to ensuring society and government and politicians that funding science is important, is a priority, because it's the seeds of discovery and so the seed of future.
Well, I guess the challenge then is how to communicate what we do and the relevance of what we are doing. And I guess from what we are all talking, and what Ángela mentioned and Crisanto mentioned, we're talking about the diversity of science in a way, and the diversity of the problems that we are facing, because the problems that we are facing, we are sometimes very Europe-driven, but the problems in Europe are going to be global problems as well. So I think we also need to face the diversity of the questions that we want to ask, and of the population in Europe who is going to be diverse, and of the population in the labs who is going to be diverse, and how to address also the work in the lab from this diverse point of view, from the question that you ask, from the people that you're working with, and from the answers that you want to look for.
I had this question for later, but as Angela mentioned, the geopolitical situation, I would like to ask you, what do you think about the situation of science right now in the US? What is happening in the US? I know this is uncomfortable for you scientists. I know, I perfectly know. But I would like to know, how do you think this could affect science there, and therefore science in Europe? Because science, of course, as you know, is not a separate thing. It's a total, it's a worldwide effort. So how do you think what is happening over there is impacting or going to impact your work?
When I was mentioning geopolitical situation, I was not only thinking of the US, I was also thinking of Europe, actually, within Europe. So we're facing, polarization, and we're facing, in the next few years, we don't know what's going to happen. In the next 5 years, elections in all the European countries, and let's see what happens. This is a worry. I'm worried about that. But actually, everybody knows, unfortunately, how the situation in the US has changed dramatically. We don't have to get into that, because in this audience, everybody knows. It is really very unfortunate that happened, and the only hope that we have is that this doesn't last for a long time, right? Our hope is that it will be for a short time. Nevertheless, from the European perspective, you can see in the news, and you can see in the also the governments saying that this is a good opportunity for Europe. I would like to say that this is not a good opportunity for anybody, because actually, whatever happens in the US with the significance of the percentage of research done in the US is bad news for everybody. So it's not good for anybody. It's not good for Europe. It's not good opportunity for anyone. However, it is very true that at least during this sort of, I hope, transient period, there are several programs. There is the new European program that it will be launched in 2028 till 2034. There is a program that is called Choose Europe. So I hope that it will give opportunities for fantastic, US scientists. And even in Spain, this ATROE program, although I have to say, sorry to say, but I think that the salaries that we can offer in Spain and the funding opportunities that we can offer in Spain are actually not good enough for senior scientists. However, it is also true that, this has happened only very recently, that we are getting more and more applications for PhD students. So, I'm very happy to say that, my next PhD student starting very soon will be, American student, female American student, who has been working in an excellent lab in Berkeley for the last 2 years. So I think this is actually a very good opportunity for interactions and collaborations. So, but as I said, the most important thing for me is that this is not good news for anyone, what happens in the US, and that my hope and our hope is that it will not last for long. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment. Yes, I fully agree, Angela, because actually I would like to call that opportunity in the sense, because it looks like we here in Europe, we are going to get profit of that situation. And obviously, at the individual level, we have here colleagues from the US. They are actually suffering quite a lot. So, but at the same time, the problem is that if this situation lasts for, more than 3 or 4 years, at the end, it would be a kind of loss of, or reduction, I would say, of expertise and things that have been acting as a driving force in the US. So I can remember the situation back after the Second World War, that many scientists from Europe went to the US. So now the situation is like we should behave like a whole community, in the sense of protecting the expertise that could be lost in the coming years just because of the very bad situation in the US. And in that sense, obviously in Europe, there are good opportunities, maybe not here in Spain. Hopefully this will change in the future. and we will be able, but in the sense not of recruiting or taking profit, but more in the sense of, I mean, gathering and cooperating and maintaining this expertise in the future as a wealth of science.
I guess in line with what you were saying, and I think it's a very good example, especially for the CBM, we have a very strong fly community, also talking about diverse organisms, and the fly-based system is all going to disappear if their funding is lost. So that's going to affect several of the people in this audience who are working there. So I would say that more than opportunity, some of these programs look at a little bit to me like opportunism, not opportunity. It's like taking advantage of someone else's miss is never a good idea. If you wanted to do this and you thought that this was a good idea, maybe you should have pushed before this happens. And now probably is the chance, like Crisanto said, to put something on our side to prevent the damage that this might do.
Else? Okay. No, I mean, you're not like to talk. I mean, it just only if you want.
But I think everything has been already said. Everything that needed to be said has been said.
Fantastic. So I would like to ask you also, I'm very sorry that I forgot the name. Fiona was going to be here today, but she is not. But I would like to ask you about the collaboration in Europe, the programs like EMBO and Horizon Europe. How important is that for your molecular biology? I mean, how important is that?
Like the sorry.
No.
Like the poet John Donne says, no man is an island, and so no scientist is either. So I think it's clear that cannot be less important. So so all the European network, such as the EMBO, Marie Curie, Action, and Horizon Europe, are fundamental for shape the future of molecular biology, I think. And so they are important for foster collaboration across countries. And this is very fundamental for our field because they enable sharing resources and opportunity and facility and technology. And they also offer, for us that are from the university, a good platform for training students that is fundamental for the future of the field. And so I think that for challenges that are complex, they allow something like a multidisciplinary approaches that are impossible even to imagine in isolation. So I think that are fundamental. Collaboration is fundamental right now, especially if we have few fundings.
Yeah.
Well, I would say like from a personal experience point of view, I guess my career is basically based on the European funding, right? I got back from US while I was doing my postdoc, thanks to an Marie Curie International Outgoing Fellowship. Then I was based in an ERC-funded lab for 5-6 years. And then now I'm the coordinator of a doctoral network in the European Union, so from the Marie Curie Actions too. So I guess that I could say a good chunk of my career is based on this funding and this collaboration. The original idea that I entertained to come back to Spain in collaboration with my former supervisor in US, Danny Reinberg, actually did not really happen, but then we came up with something different. So I guess it's more about getting together. And that's also with this doctoral network, to me, the main advantage is getting together. I guess for countries like Spain or others that we do not have that much funding for small groups, having these networks also gives you a big amount of funding. But for, let's say, other bigger countries, Germany, France, they probably benefit more from the interaction than from the money itself. And the getting together of the ideas. We managed to get something put together and start new projects. And actually from this network, there are several new collaborations that are started within these groups that they knew most of each other before, but they did not get the chance to collaborate.
Fine. So just like Emilio, I made my career thanks to EU programs and EU funding. I was a postdoc in FP5, FP6, got my first project in FP7, first coordinated projects in Horizon 2020, and now I still coordinate in Horizon Europe. So I had a good opportunity to see how policies have been developed throughout these framework programs. I remember in FP5 when I read the guidelines and I read about the European research area. What is that? And now it's common practice. Our Erasmus students, they move, we exchange, we have doctoral networks. So yeah, some of these policies are put into practice through this framework programs. Some of them are test beds for, I would say, concepts that have had such a positive impact. I mean, pushing forth open science and scientific communication. There has been a strong involvement from the European Commission on those two aspects. And before I finish, and also speaking of policy, I think it's really important. So one of the part of the framework programs is called widening, and it opens eastwards and it opens southwards and towards the Middle East. I think given the political unrest situation in Europe and Middle East, I think that building more Europe eastwards is something that can be done through science and through research. I think it's really important at the moment.
Patricia, you mentioned EMBO and Horizon Europe. These are two completely different things because, of course, our Horizon Europe is a funding agency. EMBO is not. So, and EMBO, what it is actually providing different types of training and particularly science policy and, lobbying for science in Europe. And this is very different and it is complementary. It's actually very important. But talking about, funds on one hand and training on the other hand and science policy on the other, I think we have to put everything together. And I wanted to mention that indeed, the framework programs have been fundamental for many countries, including Spain, of course, for Spain and countries like Spain. But one thing that really worries me is that if you look at Horizon Europe, that was, implemented from 21 and goes to 27, I mean, you could see that there was, a lot of fund put into innovation, which is actually very good. But the thing is that in this audience here, we have to be worried about fundamental research. And the only pillar in Europe for excellence in research is actually the ERC, the European Research Council, within, the whole Horizon Europe. And if you look at the numbers, actually, I think that the ERC is actually underfunded. It is short. Why am I saying that? Well, I'm saying this because it is so competitive that it's actually, in some cases, it's more like an agency giving awards than rather than giving grants. If you look at now at the new numbers, the numbers are already there. So the new program, which will run till 34 from 28, the numbers are already there, and there are 4 pillars. But the pillar for excellence in research that includes the ERC and the Marie Curie excellence also, will be 44 billion, right? And innovation and competitiveness will be 115 billions. So it's almost, it's more than 2.5 times the money dedicated to that. And so I think that we actually have to,
Do something.
You have to fight and get more funds for the ERC so that it can reach other labs, not only the top, that in some cases, actually, they would not see such a big difference for their own labs. This is, I think, really very important. And this is where institutions like EMBO, for instance, and the G6 group, the G6 is actually the group made of important institutions in Europe. So we are talking about the CNRS, the CNR, the CSIC in Spain. So we're talking about the main institutions in Spain, France and Italy, together with 3 German institutions, including the Max Planck Institute. So they gather together and they have to do a lot of science policy and a lot of outreach as well and advocacy so that the science of excellence gets more funds so that it can reach more sort of, normal labs, and people would think at this as a real funding agency for basic fundamental research, which is what matters for the majority of us here.
Yeah,
Of course, EMBO has a big role on that, together with the other the scientific institutions.
yeah, sure, Angela, I fully agree. So I have nothing to add regarding the need to the funding via the ERC or whatever name we can use desperately needs to be increased, because otherwise, it wouldn't reach all the needs. But in addition, I don't know if this is a kind of policy, but something that is really important, is not only inside Europe, but outside. We are not an island. We are talking about collaborating with many of the labs all over the world. And now probably everyone here in the audience and in the table is really very aware of all the problems that we have in exchanging materials with other people. This is something that has been increasing every year, no matter whether there are flies, seeds, human materials, cells, or whatever. This is normally not very much considered when we talk about needs. Of course, we need money, but things have to be changed in order to facilitate the exchange of all these kind of things, because otherwise, all the collaborative projects will never work. So I think that this is something that probably should be written somewhere in order to make a kind of stone written and sent to the policymakers and the authorities in Brussels and in general.
Most of you have also a lot of experience in education. So I would like to ask you what is needed, or what do you see is needed in the next generation of scientists, or what do you see that is needed? I don't know what you are laughing. You both are laughing. So the first thing I would like to know, I'm sure it's money, the first thing that is needed, or not?
Not only.
Okay,
That
yes.
was-
I would like to know our because
Yeah,
Wow.
so yes, funding never hurts. We are in a particular time and place where underfunding is asphyxiating public universities.
Yeah.
And well, we're doing what we can. So I think Laura stressed the role and relevance of public universities, but public research universities where professors are active researchers, and we can take the latest things or the latest discoveries to class. We can wake vocations. I was laughing at your question because I honestly have no idea where molecular biosciences undergraduate education is going. I know that memorizing and retrieving hasn't been, that's done by machines for a long time now. And now processing, at least partly processing that information, is also now done by machines. So what is left for us to probe students with, like maybe assessing or maybe evaluating, but artificial intelligence also here is posing, I think, more of a challenge than an opportunity, right? I don't know, I was on a sabbatical last year and I just started teaching again this year, and my students are doing their homework with ChatGPT. It's perfect, it's flawless, it's soulless as well, and they haven't learned a thing. So I don't know, maybe more colleagues, educators in the audience are experiencing the same. And it just led me to think, I have no idea how we're gonna teach molecular biosciences education in the age of AI. And also as it gets more and more integrative and more complex and more interdisciplinary, how do you take that not to the graduate level or PhD level? That's easier. How do you take that into an undergrad platform? And I don't have an answer for that.
do you have an answer for that? Anyone?
Well, I'm not really involved in teaching. I guess that the problem here is what's the effect of this use of AI in learning afterwards coming out of the degree, because then they might get the degree, and then so what? Because what we need in the lab is people who think and who can create somehow things. If they don't practice how to think not out of the box, just thinking with the problem, and this, you're going to go from A to B, and you have some problem in the middle, you don't know how. But if you always record to some AI-based learning, then probably you will always be led to that direction. Maybe AI is the one who's going to tell us what we are going to be studying, not ourselves. And I guess that we want to still direct what we want to study. That's
I think also it's important to teach the importance of thinking. So not just using artificial intelligence, but using our own our own artificial intelligence. And so, but talking about retaining talent and young investigator, I think that the problem is also that we have to offer them infrastructure, fundings, mentoring, and this is fantastic and it's necessary. But I think it's also important to offer them career opportunities. And so I think that they need stable career, they need better salaries, and especially that society thinks of the importance of their role into the society. And then I think that they need time to think. So they shouldn't arrive here and be overwhelmed by bureaucracy. We shouldn't be overwhelmed by bureaucracy, because we really need time to think. And they shouldn't be left alone, because finally science is a teamwork. And so I think that it's not just a matter of PI. Of course, we need more PI, of course. We need female PI, but we also need scientific staffs. And so a stable researcher that may be enjoying and doing other parts of science, that it's also a noble part of science, I think. And so technician, scientific staff, and of course, so to say in one sentence, I think that they really need the real opportunity to do science in the long term.
I would like to know, Ángela and Crisanto's take on this.
Well, two things. First of all, every time there was a game changer like AI, we've always been afraid, and this is human nature. So I think that it is important for us not to be afraid, but actually act. And of course, we have to be careful, and we have to know the limitations and the dangers, but we have to go ahead, because this is going to help us a lot. I mean, it's not only helping us to actually deal with big data, it's also helping us to do better diagnosis. So, this is really, I mean, this is the first thing for the AI. And then with respect to the young generations, I think that maybe we have not been actually able to pass the message on the positive aspects of working in science and working in academia. We have to be more positive, right? Of course, I mean, we know that, all the difficulties and everything else, but, there are other things which are actually amazing, like the freedom to actually test your own hypothesis and things like that. And this doesn't happen in many of the jobs. We have to admit that. And we also have, this, community here that we know each other for 40 years, for 50 years. We have friends all over the world. Is that a very romantic view? Maybe. But we also have to put this into the equation, because otherwise, we know that pandemic, apart, leaving apart all the terrible, deaths and everything, we have also seen how the young generation was very much affected at the personal level. More than us, we are more resilient. They are not that resilient. They didn't have to actually be exposed to anything similar to that or nothing, so we have to understand that, and we have to help them, to guide them through, the trajectory and everything that we have to do. So again, don't be so afraid of AI. These guys, actually, the young generations, will be much better than us dealing with that. We have to regulate, but probably not really very, very much as we usually tend to do in Europe. And also, we have to give positive messages. Of course, we have to continue fighting for better investment policies, for better working conditions. Of course, we have always done that. I remember when there were no contracts, and we had only fellowships. Now this is completely solved. There are no fellowships whatsoever in Spain. Everything is contract from the beginning of the careers. We have to continue fighting, but at the same time, we have to also talk about the beauty of working in science.
I agree.
What
I
she
think-
said.
I think that actually one of the points of making it like more attractive, I think it's telling them what you have experienced. But I also think that there's one very essential point that it would be to create a career, a real career that you more or less know what path you can follow, whether it's technician, whether it's senior scientist, whether you want to be a PI, whether you want to be whatever you want to be. And now there is like so many ups and downs and comes and people feel the uncertainty. So maybe they may like the idea behind the job, but they don't like the idea of not knowing what the system is going to look like 10 years from now. Because you go into one system, we all have experienced that.
Yes.
But I guess that's also survivors' bias, right?
We want to be survivors. We want to actually, yes, I understand. And of
That's the
course,
point.
that's why I said we have to still fighting for better working conditions and things like that. But we also have to, to consider that it is not only academia. There are many other, paths that can be taken by our PhD students.
Yeah.
So, giving them the opportunity to be informed about all the possibilities that science offers, either whatever it is, working for science policy, working in, institutions, organizations, working in the editorial, world, which actually needs a lot of,
Yeah, that's exactly it.
science.
Yeah, that's precisely the point. So let's provide them with this solid ground
Yes,
where they can
absolutely,
stand.
absolutely.
They can
Because remember, like 20 years ago in Spain, everybody that wanted to do a PhD was thinking of the academy, right? And continue academic career. But, this doesn't have to be like that. And there are, as I said again, good things about any decision that you can take. Of course, difficulties, yes, but tell me, interesting, important jobs that are, devoid of difficulties. I don't know.
Oh, this is the reason, because here at the CBM, in the framework of the Train at CBM, that is a program of an internal PhD school, we implemented off-academia seminars. But then we also thought, oh, we have also to do in academia seminars.
Indeed.
Because we push people outside the academia
No, we don't
like
do
this. And so,
Yeah.
and so I agree with you.
Maybe they should be coming in and out of academia more freely too.
Yeah.
Which like
Yeah.
not thinking that this is just one way street. And I think it's probably we were talking before about US, and US is a place where you can go out of academia and then come back to academia and you're fine. And it looks here like if you're taking this path, then you're gonna be all down the path till you're dead, and that's not really happening. So maybe we need to make a fluent connection between the academia, industry, science communication, the publishing world, all these pathways that should be interconnected.
I would like to ask you something that is very interesting for me as a journalist, and it's the impact of this field or the connection with society. How can molecular biology connect with society more and demonstrate its relevance? Because I think that sometimes isn't enough. I mean, or society is not very well connected with what you guys are doing every day. What do you think about that?
Okay, I'll begin again. So I think for me, the relevance of molecular biology or the implications for healthy aging, the environment, sustainability, for me, that's always been clear. I've always worked on the more applied side of things, right? Because we had EU funding, we were forced to do quite a lot of communication. And we did European Night of Researchers, EU Open Days, ESOF, whatever, twice. and it was surprising that children, we addressed their activities at primary, secondary, early secondary school kids. Children were more knowledgeable than parents about the basics of biology, how the world works, how life works. Common comments were, oh, I didn't know that worked in that way. I didn't know that lactose-free milk, blah, 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 whatever. And then you realize that the problem is not in communicating the latest discovery, but in like basic science literacy. And how do you do that? How do you get that? I think mainstream media is the way. I listened to your segment and Neymar's, and I listened to Javier Del Pino, and you guys take the latest discoveries, and they're very fancy and flashy, and the latest thing that's been done. And that presence, that weekly presence in say a high impact medium is really necessary, but you're addressing the latest discovery. And what I think that has to go on or even grow, but what we're really needing here is more Orbitalaicas, more Carl Sagan's Cosmos, more that type of say ground science, biology programs. And I think that's the key for society to appreciate science, because I don't think we actually know how much science goes into this. I mean, we just take it for granted, or a wearable sensor or vaccine. I mean, there was going back to the pandemic, and of course, excluding all the worst aspects of it. I think it was for me, it was such a good and transparent example of how you develop a vaccine, how do you tackle a situation, for better or worse, but the scientific community was very transparent. Maybe there were many voices speaking at once, but hey, it was an emergency, right? But it was such an exercise in transparency. Whether society likes that you need to move at a certain pace because there need to be controls and checks and barriers, that is also science literacy. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that is what, in my opinion, would be desirable.
But you know, we always say, I mean, what matters is education, 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 and this is very clear. And we're not going to solve that problem, right? But you know, one thing that is I think it is very evident is that, you know, society, people in society, lay people, they have priorities, right? And in this current world, you know, the priorities are actually first priorities, you know, very important, even, you know, how much they are actually able to live a proper life and with a proper house and everything else, home and everything else. But, you know, thing is that indeed, thinking about that, you know, when the journalists actually make, you know, sort of, they ask society, what do they think of science and scientists? Until very recently, you know, we were considered like, you know, the best of the best together with the medical doctors, no? And so appreciation is there, but then is the question of priorities, you know? So what we have to actually then, you know, we tend to forget. You were talking about the vaccines, you know, in pandemia. I mean, we have experts here, but indeed, you know, it is believed that in the first year of the vaccine administration, there were more than 25 million of lives that was actually saved. And we tend to forget, but we have to be better at giving, you know, proper examples like this one. But again, you know, priorities are priorities. Society likes scientists. So what we have to do, we have to continue communicating these things, giving good examples, and also we have to fight, you know, this terrible pseudoscience, which is what is now happening. So together with, you know, different priorities, because they have, you know, primary needs, and pseudoscience that actually impacts more on people who are not highly educated, go back to the first thing, education. But I think that, you know, talking about what happens with, you know, misinformation, you know, pseudoscience, anti-vaccines and science people nowadays is even more important, because indeed we are witnessing what is happening with Mr. Kennedy, right? For instance.
In fact, I mean, it's something that it has to be considered. We all should be very jealous of people working in astrophysics, for example. I mean, you go outside and ask people about what is a galaxy or a black hole. Basically, everyone knows about that. They don't know how it works, but I mean, they know about the concept. This obviously doesn't happen in, I would say, not in biology, but not only in molecular biology. I mean, if you ask about how a genome replicates or where it's I don't know, a mitochondria or things like that, they would be kind of scared. I mean, they would think that they are talking about something in a different language. So, I mean, obviously, I mean, science, the society in general is obviously more aware about advances in biomedical research because it affects directly us. But there are many other topics that should be also considered. And it's clear, I mean, probably I mean, I say we, but I mean, someone has to do this kind of effort in communicating. We have good examples here, but it has to be increased and made much more clear. I mean, in order for the society to appreciate the kind of advances that, I mean, come behind fundamental research in biology, in molecular biology, but not only in biomedical research, but in general. I mean, knowing about the different processes in life. I mean, so I think that this is a big challenge that obviously there are people, I mean, directly involved and very much engaged in these kind of activities. But still, I think that I mean, a couple of decades ago, I remember there was a poll all over Europe asking about whether plant cells have DNA. And you'll be surprised if you don't know that. But 35% of people answer that only when they are transgenic. I mean, this means that it's a kind of, I mean, there is a huge gap to be filling in order to make the society more aware about the fundamental advances in biology in general.
Good example.
I also think that is something regarding education, but it's also something regarding the lack of feeling that the lack of basal knowledge in science is a form of ignorance that cannot be tolerated. And so, for example, I have a friend of mine, a boyfriend when I was young, that he was journalist like you, and he worked in the culture section of a newspaper. And so culture section means that he knows a lot of books and poetry and Luis Cernuda. Exactly. So he knew cinema and Michelangelo Antonioni and Fellini, but he didn't know anything regarding what the mitochondria is. And he said, I remember perfectly that he said it openly without feeling ashamed.
No, I know.
And I think that this is a demonstration that we as a society accept the lack of knowledge in basic science, in molecular biology as acceptable. And this is the work that I think we should do as a society and as educator because if I don't know who Dante is, I feel ashamed. If I didn't see the last movie on Hollywood that won the Oscar, I feel ashamed. But if they don't know what a cell is, not just the molecular mechanism of mitochondria and stuff, no, not mTOR, no, just just a cell, I think that it's not possible. So in Leonardo da Vinci ages, and then in the age of enlightenment, there was like a general feeling of universal knowledge. No, right now it's true that our society has very dedicated area, but at the same time, I think that here in this round table, we are studying very different things, but we all have a common basal knowledge of molecular biology that let us understand if the other discovery are important. And so I think in the communication, the way of the communication, at least in the long term, should try to increase the basal level of knowledge of the society. But just because they should feeling a little bit more ashamed if, if they don't know.
I know, and I bet that you all know who Dante is. I have no doubt about that. Okay, so now we will open the floor to questions. If you have some, please raise your hand, introduce yourself if you don't mind, and let us know which panelist are you addressing, or if it's for all of them or whatever. So anyone? If not, I have a lot of questions for them, but I will love you to give you opportunity to.
Maria.
Yeah.
Maria.
No, it goes. It goes? You hear me? Okay. If not, I can shout. I do that very well. So I wanted to stress once again the importance of basic science, and I really hate to make a distinction between basic science and translational science. I really think that that put us in a lower position or in a worse position, but we really have to stress forward that there's no translational science without basic science, and that has been so forever. I mean, lasers were not discovered to remove hair from our legs or do surgery in the hospitals, but they were discovered because they were looking at the fundamentals of light. And that is really basic science. And you have already mentioned CRISPR. And so there are things that really change how we address how we improve the society in terms of lifespan or sustainability or so. They seldomly come from translational science purely. So they really are based on something that was very basic, like studying like the PCR, that it was discovered by looking at the microbia in Yellowstone hazers. I mean, this is and if you will ask someone on the street, do you think that we should invest in studying the microorganisms in the hazers? They will always say no. Better study cancer or Alzheimer or so on. But really, what is life-changing is what comes from something that is not expected. So that is completely coming out of the box. So I really think that we should stress the beauty of that.
Thank you. I understand that was not a question, it was a comment. But any question? Over.
If I can,
Thank you so much.
if I can add something right along those lines, it was very funny. I was just in an EMBO meeting like last week, and I think what we're doing is hijacking the system. So I think what we're doing is, I hear more and more people saying, okay, yeah, I'm getting my grant for cancer, and then I'm doing my fundamental research too, taking this money here. So it's like, I think that's why in some time from now, we will go back to funding fundamental questions, because people are doing it nonetheless.
I would like to add something to that. I mean, you mentioned fundamental research, and then on the other side, you said cancer. And actually, you can do fundamental research in cancer as well.
Yeah.
And that is important, because indeed, you know, in the Horizon Europe, the first program that will finish in 27, there were 5 missions. One of the missions were actually cancer, right? And then, you know that in Spain, in Europe, of course, but in Spain also, there's a huge community working on cancer, different aspects. And the problem there was that when we were reading the calls, we did not find a place for us to apply, because we are doing fundamental research in cancer, but fundamental research. So the problem is not the subject you're working at, is actually the level that you would consider to actually be working. And I agree with you. I don't like to talk about, basic and applied. I'm talking about science of excellence, wherever it is. And indeed, there is also excellence in translational research. But the problem is that when the European calls are actually thinking of any disease, not only cancer, even with a mission, the 5 missions altogether, even one mission in cancer, it was very difficult to find the niche for fundamental research. That's why I mentioned that the only pillar that defends that within the whole European programs is actually the ERC. This is why we need to reinforce that, right? But yeah, we even ourselves, we actually, sometimes we don't, we fight against each other. So we can do fundamental research in every, disease as well,
So, Maria, just to add a little bit to your comment, really good tech transfer officer, innovation manager, call this person whatever, has the application in mind and then looks for the solution elsewhere in what we call basic science. If there is nothing to take from, there will be no application. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, there's a question over there.
So there's another question over there. Thank you.
Well, it's a more of a statement. So I think just to, I'm Mark Davis at Stanford University, and in this place you've heard about the US, where things are maybe not so tragic as people think. But my main comment is following up on Dr. Formentini. Science is culture.
Exactly.
And in fact, it's the only cultural activity that will progress positively every year. You can't say that about religion. You can't say that about politics. You can't even say that about art. Recently, there was a show in the National Zoo in Washington where they were teaching orangutans to paint. And they painted quite quite well. Actually, it turned out, I don't know if they sold for millions of dollars, but still. But anyway, but I think right now the public everywhere is kind of, they see science as such an esoteric activity that it's okay not to know anything. And that's part of the problem, is because they could know things. I learned some things in high school and early school that are very basic, and we can tell them more, but we have to make an effort, and you have to get educational system to insist on that. This is part of your culture. This is something you should know. You should know about vaccines. You should know about how successful vaccines have been. Somehow that got lost, and that's haunting us right now.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment. There is another question or comment over there. And
Okay.
over there. Laura, yes.
Can I say something? So thank you very much. I started exactly with this thematic. So science works, and this is an important point. And in fact, I remember a journalist that says, I like science because if I burn a book, I cannot rewrite again at the same manner. But if I burn a scientific book, if people are going to do the same experiments, we will have exactly the same book. And so I think that this is the meaning. So science works, but also art, it's good, and it's about
Yes.
Yeah. So Elaine Fuchs at Rockefeller University. I'll just follow up on what Mark said as well. And I think if we asked 5 or 6 year olds what would they rather do? Would they rather sit indoors and read a history book or an English book or poetry even? Or would they rather be outdoors and find some insect or whatever? I think most kids are instinctively interested in science. It's we that turn them off in science. And I think we have to be mindful of the fact that it's not that we don't provide them with we turn them off. And so one of the things that Cold Spring Harbor, I think, has done very effectively, because they've been interested in educational aspects for many years. And one of the things that they've done very effectively is to start DNA learning centers where it's hands-on science. Maybe they know the difference between what transgenics.
Yeah.
But they're even in inner cities where there aren't many green parks or the like, where there aren't those kinds of opportunities, it's hands-on science. And I wonder whether there are those kinds of efforts in Spain, because I think that might be very effective in terms of trying to turn things around for those young scientists in Spain who are really, they've always been interested in science and how they be maintained.
At least to my knowledge, I don't think it's like organizing a state point of view, or because we have also regional organization and things like that. From on my side, what I think many of us do is just go to schools. We do go to schools. I go to primary schools, and then I do the most simple experiments, which I enjoy, which is what I did with my kids, which is take a cabbage and just start smashing it and find pH. And I love that. And then I go to high schools, and then you talk to them about cancer and molecular biology, because they do have the background. So just, I guess it's going to schools and adapting the language and finding the language that you can speak so they can understand. And also going back to what Ángela was saying before, there was this professor, there is still, he's still alive, Álvaro Martínez del Pozo, maybe some of you know him. I was doing my PhD there, and I never forget the thing that he said to me, which I repeated many times, which is just cherish this time in which you are the first one, the only one in the whole wide world that knows this. So this is like this little tiny knowledge that you have, and this is what I try to go and tell them. So tell them about the fun of making science and the fun of learning science. That's what I do, I would say.
There's another comment
Yeah.
over there.
So I'm Lola Ledesma from CBM, and my question goes more how we educate a particular fraction of the society, which I think impact us a lot, which are politicians. And the question, and maybe I address it to Ángela, you have more experience. We have to educate politicians, or are scientists the ones that have to become politicians somehow?
What do you think? It's a difficult one.
That's a tough one. That's all yours.
I do not have more time.
Well, you
Okay,
know,
Ángela's going to-
can you go first? Would you like to go first? Yes, go first. You have a question. Okay, for that difficult question, I think again, you know, it's a matter of priorities. So these people, you know, have priorities, and their priorities, unfortunately, are very short term. So they are always only thinking about the next 4 years because of the, you know, the term they have. This is the real problem. So, you know, you need, I mean, in order to overcome that, we need to count on, you know, generosity. You know, and this is not really something that you can control. And you know, I wouldn't like to say, you know, but the thing is that, you know, they are a type of people who enjoy doing what they are doing. I mean, scientists, we are very different, right? In general. So it would be nice to have more scientists also there. And I know there are initiatives, and now, you know, in Spain, there are initiatives. In Europe have been there for a long, long time. But the problem is that we have to convince them that their priorities are very short-term priorities, and this is terrible. But the thing is that they have conflict of interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Encarna. I'm working here at the CBM. And actually, I have a question for you that are journalists. What can do a huge or an important journalist to help us to communicate to society that we are doing a good job?
Well, thank you very much. I'm not here to answer questions. Just to, I only know to make questions.
You know, a round table where everybody can speak without much pressure.
Yeah. I'm not taking a lot of time because I think there's the time for the panel, but this is something that maybe might surprise you. You would be surprised of which news receive more visits in El País or and the science news. Astrophysics, of course, that you know, there is something about our origins too. I mean, who we are, or who we come from, or where are we going to? Mars, of course, or Jupiter. But your news are also very, very visited. And what we learned in the pandemics is how to things, and Margarita knows a lot of this, how things work, are the most visited news in a newspaper, actually a science article that was about how the coronavirus spread is the most read in the history of El País. It's the article most read in the history of our newspaper. So asking your question, you would be surprised. So you are doing a good job, and we know it, and I think society knows too. But the most important thing is you answer our calls. Please, if we call you to to comment an article, please answer us. Thank you very much. I think there were some. Thank you for the question. I think, yeah.
I have a question. Well, actually, a comment about in the United States. I think what we found out in the last election is that the information, the spread of information, especially to younger people, is very different than traditional.
Yeah.
Yes.
means. And this is something that I think we all need to be thinking about as scientists. Which, I mean, if you know Huberman's show from Stanford, he is a neuroscientist, and now he is the most watched podcast, even above Joe Rogan. So it's an interesting space to look at in terms of how we communicate. The other question to you in Europe is, in the United States, we have philanthropy that really we're hoping saves the day for us during a 3.5-year.
It's struggling.
Yeah.
Hopefully gonna get. Do you guys have that?
No.
No, just,
Okay, can I?
My name is Paula Ingram. I'm from UCSF in San Francisco.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I don't know
maybe I.
Come in here, but I don't know if it's related with that or.
Kind of related to what we've been discussing, but I'd like to end perhaps on a more positive, optimistic note, and that is that there are some stark contrasts between Spain and the USA, as we all know. But I remember when I came here during the COVID pandemic, Spain were the European champions for getting vaccinated. It's like
Yes.
85, 90%, something
Mm.
incredibly impressive.
Yes.
There was no science skepticism there, like there is. I mean, it's with America. It was. I was very impressed. And I said, what are they doing right here, and what's going wrong in America? I mean, what's the norm too? I mean, is what's going on here what should be the normal, or is there the normal? You know, why is there this stark contrast, and how can we? And why did Spain do so well? You know, how can you explain that?
Well,
Margarita is over there, has all the answers of this question. But okay. Does anyone over on the floor? Margarita, actually.
Yeah, it's. I have a comment on that.
I think one important thing about science is that we offer solutions. So instead of asking for money and more
excuse
money
me,
and more money.
Margarita, it's difficult to hear you from here. Can you speak up a bit, please?
Oh, yeah.
Explain. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, use your microphone, Margarita. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, does it work? We have to concentrate on what we are doing and to be very excellent in sorting out the details of whatever field we're working on. But we also have to have this wide vision of how that can help society or just help explain how things work,
Yeah.
be useful.
But I think that the one thing, just a minute, the one thing that I think that made Spain a bit different in that respect, to answer Mike's question, is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you ask Spanish people about science and scientists, there is a big appreciation. Another matter is whether they do consider funding a priority. This is another matter. But the appreciation is always very high. And therefore, anti-vaccine people, they were actually very small percentage. And of course, I mean, the campaign was fantastic. Administration of vaccines was fantastic. Information was also very good, thanks to people like Margarita, who was on TV, almost every day, the poor thing. But the point to me is that people trust scientists in Spain.
Why do they do that here and not in the US?
I cannot answer that question.
I'd like to come back to one of the questions, because I'm not sure that whether the microphone was working, but she was asking about the situation of philanthropy here in Spain compared with the US, where probably is saving all the struggles that are now in the US scientists. So obviously the situation is a kind of galaxy apart from the situation in the US. We do have some, private foundations, banks, and so forth that act with supporting with philanthropic funds. Actually, the CBM is, partially funded by and contributing by the Fundación Ramón Areces, quite, important amount. But this is not frequent. There are not many fortunes here that are really willing to spend a big amount of money on that. There is a law now that I'm not sure whether it has been finished or not, but trying to make some more kind of advantages for people giving money as a philanthropy. But this is not solved, and the situation is very, very limited, actually. So I wouldn't see that as a solution to compensate for the low funding in science.
I think that this is not only a Spanish thing; it's a European thing,
It's
right?
European.
And Europe, the UK is different. It's always different, but they're different on that as well. They have a lot of charity, and this is because they have the tradition. And actually, it's the UK and the US. But we are different. It has to do with our culture, our history, and our religion even, right? So yeah, I think it is embedded into our roots. We are not thinking of giving back to society whatever the society gave us. This is a very important concept, and I think that this doesn't happen as much as it does in the US, in Europe, not in Spain only, in general in Europe.
So I don't know where the microphone is. Is there any other question in the floor, or is there anything? So Maria, okay, and then Marisol, and we finish, right?
Just a short comment, and I think that applies to both.
Everyone.
Why in the US it was different from Spain, and also about philanthropy. And I think that that also relies a lot on having a strong public health system. So here in Spain, we're used to go to the doctor since we are kids. When we are pregnant, we go to the doctor and we do what the doctor tells us to do. And I think that's not so common in the US because it's not the primary health system is completely different. And I think that also applies in the wrong, it pushes to the wrong side the lack of philanthropy, because we think that the public system has to be the driving force, not only for health, but also for science and education. I really think it is a better way to go, but I think that it can be good for some things, and then it might be against philanthropy. But I really think that we still have to convince our politicians, and here in Madrid, they are not so convinced of making public things stronger and than the private education or health system. So I think that we should fight also for keeping strong public services.
Okay, thank you. And then Marisol over there, and we finish.
Thank you so much. You touched so many important topics, but there is one maybe that we also have to think about. And this is, so it was mentioned before, this distinction between basic and applied research. And I agree that it shouldn't be that, separated categories. But now in terms of reaching out and thinking about molecular biology and how important and how to push forward this discipline, right? So this is not only academia, right? So we have to think about other places where molecular biology and biologists are important, of course, in the clinic and of course also in the industry. And it's not, as we not discussed here, we're thinking about philanthropy and different ways to get there our research. But I think there's still, we have to improve better our interactions with the industry and how, but bi-directional, okay? It's not only just to get grants from them, but actually to get people within the decision-making of the company. So I would like to get your, and I know some of you are very involved in different programs in the US and now to get, well, whether it's biotech to other kinds of industries, because in the end, even though basic research is what we aim for, it has to be up, or it would be good to be applied. So what's your take on that, and how can also help give, I don't know, getting our results also beyond our own labs?
I maybe could start by saying that some of these European programs, like the doctoral networks, they do address this issue, and they actually push for PhD fellows to stay for a while in industry while they're conducting their PhD. So I guess that's one basic point, like training PhD fellows also, and letting them know that there's also a career there, and putting them in contact with industry before they finish. Not like somehow it's, I think in Spain it's happening more and more. There's like, you finish your PhD, then you make a master, then you go into industry. It shouldn't happen like that. If you finish your PhD, you should be ready to go into industry yet, at least in somehow. Then I think it's a different situation when you're talking about the grants and translate your grants and your research into maybe a venture, whatever, or company that you want to drive. And probably that's also starting to grow here. Like we have in transfer offices in many more institutes than what we used to have. There were none before, right? Because it was not even. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is a matter of training. It's the same as the communication. I think we need to be trained too.
Exactly. Okay, so
Okay.
do you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay.
May
Yeah,
I?
yeah, just the last one, okay?
Okay. Well, so that's quite a responsibility.
Yeah, so that's the most important one.
Stupid. Well, I just wanted to say a quote from Pasteur, which I think can be relevant to this discussion about applied or non-applied science. And he says that there's no such thing as special category of science called applied science. There is science and its applications, which are related to one another as the fruit is related to the tree that has borne it. And so I feel that not to antagonize thing is probably a way forward, and realizing that there's an interdependency, and you cannot say, well, we've done all the basic, now we do only the applied, or the converse is not the right way. So that's just a small comment. Another one is related to the interest in science. And I really liked what you said, Elaine, about the fact that we probably turn off the curiosity into the world around us, because all the little ones, whoever they are very curious about nature and everything. But the education system should be really reflecting on how we are doing the teaching. And so we get them bored to tears. I remember for myself, when I learned biology at school, I hated it. I thought it was completely boring, because you just had to learn things and remember, and there was no
part of trying to probe or test things, which was the thing that I thought was cool. So I think that maybe there are things we need to reconsider in the way we educate, and perhaps the AI time is also an opportunity, as was said before, because it's also time to really think now. It's easy to get all the information. What is more important is how you ask the question, how you can be critical, what you can make out of it. And this is what we should teach early on, because they are really clever. The little one, they immediately grasp things. So I think that there's a big change that could be a fantastic opportunity to get science again, perhaps in the middle of the scene and of interest for many people. That's sort of what I wanted to say.
So thank you so much for for this last comment. So doing a short recap of what you have said here, the exciting times are coming. We are facing as humanity a lot of challenges like climate change, aging, geopolitical situation, AI and technology, and molecular biology, sorry, must play a role in this future. The society, we need the society to trust and invest in science and in public education, even in this difficult political situation, both in Europe and the US. Trying not to turn off our kids from this love for science they have. And as Laura said, I'm going to finish with this. No man is an island, and this panel is a very, very well proof of that. So thank you so much, everyone, the panelists, and all of you for your very, very, very interesting comments. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.